Hi everyone. This will be the second week of our ecosystems project. At this point, we're halfway done, and hopefully you have 6 slides completed or close to 6 slides completed. So here's my 6. My project is on the Serengeti grasslands. So I presented all these slides in the videos last week. And I jazzed up my food chain slide a little bit, as you may see, and I jazzed up my wildebeest species profile slide a bit, and I added 2 more species. I didn't have these in the video, but I added the rhino, the black rhinoceros, and the lion as well. So that's up to 6 slides, and in this video I'm going to talk about slide number 7. So here's Google Classroom. For slide 7, there's actually 2 options this time. Okay, so I'm going to first overview the 2 options and then show you how to do one of them. So the first option is called Ecosystem Engineer. Okay, Ecosystem Engineer. If you choose this option, your slide should contain the following. So yeah, you only do one of the options. You don't do both options. So if you choose Ecosystem Engineer as slide 7, then the slide should have a heading called Ecosystem Engineer. Provide the definition of an ecosystem engineer in general. So ecosystem engineer, that's actually a scientific term in ecology. So if you choose this option, you have to find the definition of that. Look up what it means and put that in your slide. Next, you have to identify and provide the name of one organism in your ecosystem that can be considered an ecosystem engineer. Okay, so not all organisms can be considered ecosystem engineers. In fact, probably a very small percentage of organisms can actually be considered an ecosystem engineer. And possibly your ecosystem might not even have one. Okay, you're going to have to research to find out if your ecosystem even has one. And if it doesn't, then you may be automatically having to do option 2. But I do have one for my Serengeti grasslands ecosystem, so I'll be showing you this option. So after you provide the name of the organism that's an ecosystem engineer, you need to justify to me why this organism can be considered an ecosystem engineer. Okay, justify to me why you're allowed to call it an ecosystem engineer. Then include 2 pictures, one picture of the actual organism and a second picture that shows how the organism affects the landscape of your ecosystem. So I'll show you that in my slideshow. And then as usual in the speaker's notes section, provide the sources you used for your images and information. So I'm just going to focus on this option for now. I'll try to make the slide quickly and then I'll come back and explain option 2. Okay, so I need to add a new slide. Give it a heading. That's the first requirement, is the heading. So this will be Ecosystem Engineer. And I might jazz it up afterwards. I'm just going to get the information down for this video. All right, I'll move this text box a little bit. Okay, the first requirement was the heading. The next requirement is a definition of what is an ecosystem engineer in general. I'm actually not going to write the full definition down because I don't want to just give you the answer. I want you to look it up. But I would make sure I include that somewhere in my slide. So I'll start the sentence. An ecosystem engineer is, and then if I were to actually do this as a student, I would complete that sentence. All right, so that was the next requirement. Then the next requirement is to identify an ecosystem engineer in my ecosystem, the Serengeti grasslands. And I actually can think of 2 that I could probably argue that they're ecosystem engineers. One of them was the wildebeest, which I talked about in an earlier slide. Okay, so due to its migration of thousands and thousands of wildebeest, it does have an effect on the ecosystem that can make it be considered an ecosystem engineer. However, I'm going to choose a different one, one that I have not talked about yet. That would be termites. Okay, so I'm going to say in the Serengeti grasslands, one example of an ecosystem engineer are termites. Okay, so let me change the font here a little bit. So that was the next requirement. And then I also have to justify why they would be counting as an ecosystem engineer. So once again, I don't really want to give away what the definition is of the ecosystem engineer. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about some of the behaviors of these termites. I'll use point form. Once again, I'll make it look nicer later on. I just want to get the info down in this video. So I had to do research on this. I found a nice article from New York Times, Termites, Guardians of the Soil. Here's a picture of a termite mound. This article has quite a few pictures with captions, but none of the captions actually say they're from the Serengeti grasslands. So actually cannot use any of these pictures. So I went and found a second website of pictures that are actually from the Serengeti grasslands of termite mounds. So different ones look different. I need to include include one of these pictures. So I'll just pick this one here. Copy and paste. I also need to include a picture of a termite itself. So here's one from the New York Times article. Here's a picture of a worker termite, so I'll include that one as well. You can resize the images, move them around, do whatnot for your slideshow. Might do that actually. Put them on the side here. I like to give these a little subtitle sometimes if it's not clear what it is. I mean, I think it'll be clear when I describe the termites, but I'll put the subtitle in anyway. So I'll add a text box, a termite mound. I'll say in Serengeti. And then I'll give a subtitle, a caption to the picture of the termite as well. All right, so I got my pictures, I got my heading, got my definition of ecosystem engineer, got my example of the engineer, which is a termite. I'm going to add the speaker notes right now. That'll be quick. Just cut and paste the links. So there's the New York Times article link. And there's a link where I got the termite mound picture from. Okay, so the last thing I need to do is to justify my choice of termites as qualifying as an ecosystem engineer. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a few facts about these termite mounds here. So termites are insects that build massive systems of tunnels underground. Okay, so these little termites, they dig lots and lots of tunnels, and there's like millions and millions of termites all working together in a colony there. So I'll say that they live in colonies too. So they do dig underground, but sometimes they bring the material back to the top as well. As you see, these mounds are above the ground. Okay, so they also build mounds above the ground. So these termite mounds, they're kind of in various places in the savanna, in the Serengeti. The Serengeti is normally pretty flat, but now there's these little mounds that pop up. They're not hills, they're not mountains, but they're built. They're built by these termites. Okay, and I'll say that underneath in the ground there, by these termites digging all these tunnels and stuff, like they're doing it for themselves. They're giving themselves a place to be protected and where they have ideal conditions for the way that they live, and a place for the queen termite to lay eggs, and for the worker termites to take those eggs and put them in different places within all those tunnels. So they do all that for themselves, but these termite mounds actually end up helping the ecosystem as a whole also. All right, so by digging those tunnels in those holes in the ground, they actually help, we say aerate. They help to aerate the ground a little bit, so let the air circulate better through the soil. They also help to add nutrients to the soil as well. So by these termites doing this work and building these mounds, they're not just helping themselves, they're also helping the ecosystem as well. So these tunnels and mounds are helpful to the soil in the Serengeti grasslands by aerating it and providing it the nutrients. You may have also seen, as I was scrolling through some of the pictures here, that a lot of animals, larger mammals, will also use termite mounds for various things, for resting, for standing to get a better view, a higher view, and some of them will even use it as like a scratching post. There was a picture of an elephant in one of these ones. Yeah, an elephant using it as a scratching post as well. So animals of the Serengeti also use termite mounds as lookout points, resting areas, and scratching posts. All right, so there's an example of a slide for Ecosystem Engineer that satisfies all the requirements. As usual, there is a rubric that you can click and view for how you get the marks. Now quickly, the other option, option 2, instead of doing an ecosystem engineer, you can choose animal architects. Okay, your other option is animal architects. So for this option, what you would need is a heading, animal architects, and describe 2 different structures built by animals found in your ecosystem and explain the purposes of the structures. Include a relevant picture for each of them. So that's at least 2 pictures, one for each structure, one for each animal. And in the speaker notes, provide the sources you used for images and information. So I could, the slide I made is also helpful for option 2 as well. Okay, I just need 2 structures built by animals. So the termite mound is a structure built by an animal. I just have to find one more in the Serengeti grasslands. So structures can be things like birds' nests or beehives, honeycombs, spider webs, or holes that animals dig in the ground or that woodpeckers do in trees. Burrows, a lot of animals will create burrows where they can go in and hide and rest. So these are examples of structures built by animals. You just need 2 of them. That's option 2.